Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today. You are listening to WRUU, LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. And this is the Adam Messer Show. I'm your host, Adam Messer. And my special guest today has been here before, author Nicole Givens Kurtz. Welcome back. Thank you so much for being here.
All right, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be back.
I
It's
am,
always
I am too. So everybody, I was talking about the Storytellers Mag, and we launched the first one last month. And what I did was I played the pre-recordings for those. And what I thought this month, because I want to celebrate African American history, I also want to celebrate my friends who are in the industry, who are writing, because this is also Women in Horror Month. And I thought, wow, I got a radio show, and what a better way to do it than just to use the platform to try to amplify voices and to try to, put that out there. So this is our first episode for February, everybody, with Nicole. And Nicole's been on the show before, but this one we're going to be talking about like the love of storytelling and the art of storytelling. Not so much the nuts and bolts, everybody, because Nicole's done like a ton of interviews, but more so kind of just about storytelling and having fun with it and that kind of thing. So, Nicole, I really appreciate you being here today. I think this is just a wonderful thing, especially you've had a lot going on actually since the last time we talked about a month ago, huh?
yes.
Do you mind filling us in, like the tea on what's new with you?
Oh man. I have a lot of because it is Women in Horror Month and simultaneously it's Black History Month. Um, I have lots of panels. I have BossCon virtual convention coming up this weekend. I have a Virtuous Con coming up the end of the month, around the 20th. It's just been really great. In terms of things happening. I had a new release last month. We talked about that before on a previous episode of A Theft Most Foul that's doing really well. So it's just been an amazing time. I've had like lots of interviews about women in horror, particularly Girl Makes Monster, which is Michelle Lane's column where we talk specifically about Black women in horror.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just been a very exciting month. It's also my birthday month. So,
Yeah.
so
What day is
it's
your
always
birthday?
the 27th.
Awesome. Well, happy
I
early
am a
birthday.
deep, I know I was almost a March baby, right? 2 more days and I would have been March 1st, but definitely a February baby. And so it's a fun month anyway, but there's just so many great things happening virtually online that it's just been super exciting.
And congratulations for your anthology Slay making the preliminary ballot for the Stoker Awards. That's awesome.
Yes. Oh, and they also that was really fantastic too. Thanks for bringing it up. But Slay also was a recommended read by Locus Magazine, which was really fabulous as well. It's like wow. I mean that it's a great volume of stories, and we've talked about Slay before on a different interview.
Mm-hmm.
But it's such a groundbreaking work in terms of here are all these 28 stories about vampires and slayers from the African diaspora. It's a very fun volume, and I often tell people, I dare you not to find 5 stories at least in that anthology that you absolutely love and that resonate and linger with you after you're done reading them.
I was honored to be able to be part of the Kickstarter. And
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was so cool that you put everybody's name in there. That I don't know. You had almost like 100 people or something like that, or what?
Yeah.
It was crazy. It was like a really well funded project, and so that was a really good win. And I think that was so cool because this is it's kind of funny, everybody. We were talking right before air because I always have to let people know, guests, if they've been on here before or not. I would just remind them of being an FCC radio station and all that. And so we are just talking a little bit before air that I want to talk about more like the love of storytelling and that kind of thing. And you you've been doing this for a while, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like, how many years have you been writing and publishing?
So my very first publishing contract was with a small press called Digital Publishing way back in 1998.
Nice.
So yeah, I've been doing this a very long time.
Yeah, and the point I'm trying to bring out is that like you had a lot of wins this year and last year, but that's a culmination of years of work. And
Oh
so,
yeah.
yeah, I think I want to congratulate you. I know that you've been working really hard. That's one of the things I admire about you is that you work at it. You don't just sit around and expect it to come. You just like, you're one of the people that you're kind of like Bobby Nash. He's always promoting his stuff and sharing it. You're also doing that. You're always promoting it, sharing it, trying to boost up other authors, especially in the African American community. And I think it's wonderful. I just think it's wonderful. So I'm really glad to see that you're getting your due with the accolades and the recognition and the awards and stuff. So
I mean, that's you want, what you do is you, as a writer, you want to share your stories with others, and you want to provide stories. I want to provide stories that may not always make it through gatekeepers. And so for a particular audience that I didn't have, I wanted to see stories that I didn't see or have when I was a young Black girl growing up in Knoxville, Tennessee. So when you see that resonate with other people beyond the demographic where you were shooting for, that's always a plus. And that's always like a warm, okay, this tree is bearing fruit. All right, I definitely am it's resonating with people. And that's what writers really want. They want to share their stories, and they want those stories to resonate with a reader or with readers. And so as long as that happens, that continues to be a driving force for me, sharing those stories and making sure they resonate with readers and offer representation, not just for Black girls or Black women, but also it's really important in terms of representation that people who are not part of the demographic also see Black women being heroes, Black women being detectives, Black women being full-rounded characters, and not just these caricatures or stereotypes that they're sometimes used to seeing, especially in popular media.
Yeah, I think it's important as well, and that's one of the reasons why I try to support and use my platform as well to help out, because I feel like I have a lot of different friends and family. Like my wife is from Mexico City, and I've always, like as a kid, growing up in Cincinnati, we had our school was one of the first like integrated schools. So I had African American friends growing up, and for me, I just always felt like we're all people, and I know that there's a lot of differences out there, and it's the playing field is it's still not level, but it's getting better. I had a conversation with Ellen Datlow, and she said in the last 5 years she's seen a lot more women in horror publishing and things like that. So I mean, it's not quite there yet, but it's it's progressing. So I'm glad to see that. So, Bass, you want to play something for us? All right. So this is Sebastian Messer, everybody. He plays live for us, and take it away, Bass. Awesome. Hey, and you have you all just played your first gig, right?
Yeah.
It's your band's Krieger, right? And when are you doing that next?
It's gonna be at March 6th. It's like a Saturday.
Okay.
And, I'm not too sure what time it starts. It's probably gonna be like 6 or 7.
Where are y'all doing it at?
We're gonna be doing it at the Brickwall Cafe in Hinesville.
Oh, okay, cool. And then Krieger is what kind of band?
Right now it's kind of like a bluesy metal.
Bluesy metal, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I think it's cool. Yeah, I know you had a really good time when you were down there, and then also we're gonna be doing March the 18th, which is a Thursday. at the front porch cafe, or the front porch. What is it? The coffee house, coffee shop? Pretty sure it's a coffee shop. Yeah. So yeah, but I'm excited for you, Bess. I think it's really cool that you're out there putting your music out. I know it's not easy either.
Yeah.
What did you think about your first gig?
It was fun. We had to kill a lot of time for the band coming up after us.
Yeah.
And so it gave us a little more time, to show people, what we're doing.
Oh, that's good. That's good. All right, man. Well, I'm gonna turn your mic off so I can get back to talking with Nicole. But I wanted to just share that good news with everybody. That's cool. So anyway, yeah, Nicole. Yeah, he had his first live gig last weekend, and I thought it was so cool.
That is cool.
Yeah, he's been playing for the last 5 years or so, more than 5 years now, I guess.
March 13th to 16th.
Yeah, 6 years in March. You said okay. Yeah, but it's always neat because it's kind of like the same thing when I see my friends writing and putting out books and stuff, and I always celebrate. I always think it's so much fun. Like, even if it's not something that I want to read per se, I want to support them and just show my support. And that doesn't always necessarily mean I'm going to buy their book. Not trying to say that, but trying to share this stuff, or especially if it's something I do want to read, because I don't want somebody to buy like my book that they don't really want to read it, they just want to buy it. I mean, I'm not opposed to them saying I'm not going to turn down their money, don't get me wrong, but I'm trying to share my love of storytelling with other people, and I'm finding that just connecting with those folks, you know what I mean? Like finding my people and the people that like my stuff. Like you were talking about representation. I mean, I think it's so cool that, we live in the time that we live in, and that it is coming around and it is showing like, okay, there's more representation out there. And it's not just homogenized as much as it used to be. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of work to be done, but it's kind of exciting to see it, seeing the platform change,
Yes.
So,
I know that there is. I mean, I think the last publishing report, like diversity in publishing report, was like from 2018, and overall, like diversity in terms of like people of color, it's still like 5% of all books published.
how much did you say? I'm sorry, I didn't catch it.
It's like 5%.
Oh wow.
So it's really low.
Yeah.
So I think I want to caution about I think the appearance is that it's changing, but I don't think that as long as you don't have people of color as editors or acquisition editors or places where in magazines where the acquiring editors, if you don't have people of color in those positions, I don't think you're going to see a significant turnaround in the acquisitions and publishing of books by that feature or are written by people of color or LGBTQ, right? I think that unless you have those people in positions where they can make those decisions, it's just like it's like a TV show writer's room. On the appearance, it could be a black TV show, but if in the writer's room, it's predominantly white or predominantly male and it's a female show or what have you, if you don't have that diversity in the writing room, if you don't have that diversity in the editor and acquisition editor managers positions, it's not going to be sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be some faux pas and some steps, because it's not, for me, it's not enough just for you to put a black face on a speculative horror or fantasy novel.
Yeah.
It's not enough for you to just say, hey, we have this really great TV show, this streaming show on Netflix, but it's kind of white, so we want to make sure that we don't offend anyone, so let's put in these two one-dimensional black characters that have no significance other than serving the white hero's journey and die in the first 3 episodes. Like, that kind of stuff,
I can imagine it's very frustrating.
Right. So on the surface, sure, it looks like we have a very strong push toward diversity and inclusion and fantasy and in science fiction and in horror, but it's got to be more than surface. And so I think it's like when Black Lives Matter, which is always an important cause for me, but I would see like back in December and November, lots of companies saying we support Black Lives Matter, and they're saying that it's all publicity and PR, but there's no evidence of actual deep work. Right? It's all lip service. Where
Mm-hmm.
is the work? What is your
Yeah.
company actually doing? So, I'm not getting too political, but just saying that I think in terms of like, I'm excited to see lots of like, I mean, I'm excited to see diversity in spec. I'm always pushing for diversity in spec, but I would love for it to be authentic inclusion. And so that's kind of one of the things I'm actually pushing for now is that I would love to see um, I also like to see independent authors get more due. So if you look at lists, we were talking about recognition earlier. One of the things that I find immensely frustrating is when they talk about, hey, like especially this month, I want to read diversely. I want to. Who are some Black writers you recommend? And it's the same five Black writers
Right.
over and
Right.
over again.
Right.
When there is a plethora of Black authors who write spec. And Gerald Coleman, bless his heart, has developed like this huge graphic of two different ones of other Black fantasy science fiction writers to which you can go read their work. It's
Mm-hmm.
not these same five authors over and over
Mm-hmm.
again. So, yeah.
You know, it's crazy how it mirrors culture too. Because if you look at like popular music and how it's changed over like I don't know the last 70 or 80 years or whatever. You know, there was like with rock and roll, for example. You know, like it being a takeoff of blues, and then like with the rap movement and R&B and all that has in gospel. You know, gospel's a huge popular version of music in the U.S. And I feel like it's the same way with entertainment, with TV and books, that it's more of like you would see back in the day. You would see different creators, like musicians. You know, they had their own studio and they would start putting stuff out. And they started off as like indie stuff, you know, and then they started putting out, and then bigger records were like, oh, let's check this out and whatever. And same thing with sports. You know, back in the day, they had segregated sports. You know, if you look at sports today, it's integrated, and who are the athletes that are dominating? You know, you look at any kind of culture in the U.S. or any kind of popular, you know, entertainment or whatever, and there's always gatekeepers. You know, there's always some kind of gatekeepers, and then you know, over time, I think things do change, but it's not. I mean, it's not overnight. It's just you know, like I thought when I was a kid, you know, I thought like things are going to be different, but they aren't. And I try to do what I can, but yeah, I agree with you about the it's like the poster boy type stuff, or the poster boy syndrome, I think what you're talking about, where it's like one person is supposed to be representing like a whole bunch of people, and it's just not the case. You know, so I feel like it's important to, you know, really, if you want to check stuff out. I mean, like you know, people don't have to. Like, you know, somebody might not like spec fiction. You know, I don't
Right.
care. They don't have to check it out. Just like I don't care if people read my books or not. If I don't want them to try, you know, to to just do it just to be like, oh, I'm gonna, you know, buy the book for you just because then, you know, I've sold 100 books and maybe like, you know, 10 people read it. You know what I mean? Like that's great. I
Yeah.
appreciate selling the book, but I don't know. I mean, it's just it's not. I wish we had an answer. I wish we had, you know, a way to be able to move forward and like just say, hey, this is the new way. But a lot of people are still resistive, and I think it's just a matter of more people, you know, saying, hey, you know what, I don't I don't care for it to be that way. I want it to be better and be different. So,
Well, there's just so many great stories. I know
oh
we're talking
yeah.
about stories today, and there are so many more rich, deep, fun, exciting, fantastic stories that
Mm-hmm.
don't orient or center white males. And I just think that those stories deserve to be told. I think they would be much more interesting If
Mm-hmm.
you think about how popular K dramas are here in the United States, because again, and those stories don't center right white males at all. They're all Korean dramas, but they're incredibly popular because those are stories and cultures that we haven't, as a populace in mainstream popular, had a lot of exposure to. And those new stories are engaging for us. They're entertaining for us. It's like, oh my gosh, where have these? Like, there are people who are diehard K drama lovers that are American. And so I think that having exposure to those different voices is a necessity for expanding your mind, for growing, for your world awareness, and for self awareness. These things are pivotal, I think, in terms of your growth as a human being. So I used to teach, I taught for 18 years. And one of the things I used to tell my students is one of the things you want to do in your life is to never stop learning, never stop acquiring new knowledge. You have not peaked. You have not reached the end of your learning. And you should read everything. Back of cereal boxes, the back of your soup cans, whatever. Read, consume, and read everything. Not just the things that you love or that you find entertaining, but to read everything and diversely so that you can enrich yourself and grow as a person. And I think that's true of the media that we consume as well. It needs to be diverse, right? It needs to, for that reason, so that we can learn and acquire different things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think people want diversity, and they've been trying to push more for diversity. But I can see your point about like it's surface level. It's maybe not sustainable change. I mean, I could definitely see your point with that. Um, what do you think are some measures that people can take to actually, because I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't agree with you on reading like everything and the stuff that you don't like or whatever. I do agree like trying new stuff out and seeing if it's something you do like or whatever. But I feel like a compulsory reading is I don't know. I think it's a big turnoff for a lot of folks, and I think it's one of the reasons why statistics show that people don't read a complete book after high school because of compulsory reading. I feel like if they made it entertaining and fun, it would probably be a little bit more engaging. But I do agree, try new stuff out, try different things out, but don't force yourself to read it just because you have to or you want to or you're like, I just want to. You don't have to force yourself. I feel like if you do try to do stuff like that, it's going to turn you off more. But if you try something out and you say, hey, well, okay, I like, like I'll give an example. Like, I'm not a huge fan of the newer style of rap. I like older school stuff. And I've got a friend of mine that he's always putting out new rap art, music or whatever. And I like his style because he's also like old school like that too. But I don't really care for the newer stuff, right? So, and if I were to force myself to listen to it, I don't know that I would necessarily like it, even if I force myself. I feel the same way about reading. If I'm not a big romance reader. I don't like reading romance, and I'm not big on rom-coms. I don't feel like I should have to force myself to read those. But I do agree with you on trying to read and read all the time. It's just that I don't necessarily agree with like saying, hey, you should read stuff just because you want to, say try it out, but not necessarily that you have to read it just because you want to read it.
Did I say that you should read things that you don't like?
I think you did. Yeah, that's why I was asking you about that. I'm saying I don't really agree with that. Like read stuff that you don't like, and even if
I think so.
maybe
What
I
I mean by that
misunderstood
is
you.
no, I think I mean. Well, let me elaborate. Let me clarify actually, because I think that I said read things that you don't like. I think I'm the perception of things that you may not like. Let me change that.
Oh, okay.
For example, things that you think, well, I'm not going to like romance, right? But romance is a very varied genre. There's
Mm-hmm.
suspense romance, there's super sexy romance, there's romance that JD Rod writes. It doesn't even feel like a romance, right? It's just that the two lead protagonists just happen to be characters that love each other, but it's a really great in-depth mystery novel.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think that I think a lot of people go, well, I don't like X, but having not ever tried X.
Right.
And so
That makes more
that's
sense.
what I
Yeah.
mean. That's what I mean by read things that maybe I should have said things that you perceive you may not like.
I kind of look at that like
As
when I was
well.
a kid, my mom would be like, "Try different foods. If you don't like it, you tried it. At least you tried it. You can't just say I didn't like it because I didn't like the way it smelled or looked or whatever, right?"
Right. So I definitely think that people should try things that they perceive they may not like. Because I have been at conventions, and when we used to have in-person conventions, and I used to vend, I
Hmm.
would have white men look at my titles and be like, yeah, there's no books here for me. And I'm like, so you don't like, you know, you don't like Blade Runner? Well, you don't like Blade Runner. Well, this is just, it's a mystery, it's cyberpunk, it's futuristic noir. It's just that the protagonist happens to be a black woman, but she doesn't spend time lamenting about being a black woman. She's trying to solve this case or this mystery.
Yeah.
And so I think that, and so much so that the perceptions of, I don't think I'm going to like that, versus saying, hey, let me look at this, let me read the first page or whatever, because you can do that, and see if this is something that I might like, as opposed to just automatically writing it off and saying, I don't like, you know.
Do you ever do that
Uh,
yourself? Like, do you ever just kind of look at something and just write it off?
Sometimes so I do with clothes and with certain foods, but usually with writing, or with books, I would go by and go, God, that looks like if there's a clown on the cover, I don't really like clowns. He's
Yeah.
holding a machete, whatever. But I will pick it up and go, okay, let me read the back, because there have been times I've been burned before where I thought I'm not going to like that, and then I actually read it and I'm like, I love this. And
Yeah.
so I try to be a lot more open. Like, for example, I don't like you, I don't like newer versions of rap, but I do listen to see if I
Hmm.
might be responding repugnantly to something, right? This is not, get off my lawn, right? This is not my rap. Um, so
Well, that whole thing came up because my friend and I, we were talking about like mumble rap, and I was like, man, I just don't like it because I don't understand what they're saying, and I get it that the kids like it, like that's their jam, you know. And my buddy was like, and it's not like I was hating on or anything like that. We were just talking about, like, I was telling him I like his, even though his stuff's new, it's like, to me it reminds me of like old school, like OG rap type stuff. And
yeah,
he was like, well, they do them, man. They want to do what they want to do, and I mean, obviously they're doing something right, because these I don't know what they SoundCloud rappers or whatever, these folks that are doing it out of their bedrooms and wherever, they're selling millions of singles and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, they're doing something better than me, but it's just not my style. It's the same thing. Like, I don't like big band music. Like, as a kid, my grandparents and my parents used to listen to it all the time, and it's just not my forte. But I know what it is, and I've tried it. And there's times, like, I'll be honest with you, I'm not knocking anybody, okay? But I have tried to support different indie authors, and I have, bought their stuff, and I've started reading it, and it just wasn't for me. I mean, like, I just couldn't get into it. And I think, like the theme, because you keep talking about white men, like rejecting different things or whatever. I think the theme that I see is that that the people that are going to reject stuff just because they think, oh, well, I wouldn't like this because it has, a black female protagonist or whatever. If that's what their perception is and their mindset from the get go, or looking at the cover, oh, I wouldn't like this, and they don't take the extra time, or they have no interest in it, that's a different problem, and I think that's a big problem. You know what I mean? But the folks that, like, if they pick your book up and they say, oh, let me check it out, and they read the first page or two, and they're just not into that sci-fi story, and they went into like a horror story or something like that, that's different.
right,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
I think the folks that are, like, you're talking about, the gatekeepers and stuff like that, that's a big problem in the industry. I mean, like, not just for women or women of color or whatever. It's just across the board. It's a problem, and I don't know the answer. I really don't. I see it over and over again, especially with well, like you said, you see the same five people, and I see that over and over again. I'm like, well, what do we do? How can we move forward and make it make a difference? And I don't know. I mean, I don't have the answers. I don't know the answers. I just know that I try to do what I can at my level. I mean, I just got a small platform. I don't have a whole lot of followers or anything like that, and I try to look at relationships. But I feel like it's important to hear other stories and hear other people's voices. You know what I mean?
hmm
So we got to do a station break real quick, Nicole. But I want to ask you some more about that because I'd love to hear like what you feel like would be some uh, good ways that we can improve the current state of affairs or whatever in publishing and all that.
Okay.
What does it mean when we say that WRUU is a community radio station? It doesn't just mean that we invite the community to create programming. And it doesn't just mean that we are a voice for the community. It also means that we are counting on the community to keep us going. And you are the community. Almost all of our modest budget comes from small annual or monthly donations from listeners like you. You get to enjoy our community-focused programming because many others have stepped forward to do their part. Now do your part by joining our community of listener donors. Go to wruu.org right now and make a one-time or monthly donation. And thank you for supporting Savannah's community radio station, 107.5 FM.
This is a message from the Georgia State Department of Public Health. There is a State of Georgia hotline people can call with questions or if they think they may have been exposed to the COVID-19 virus. It is 1-844-442-2681. If you believe you're experiencing symptoms of COVID-19 or have been exposed to the novel coronavirus, please contact your primary care doctor, an urgent care clinic, or your local federally qualified healthcare center. Please do not show up at an emergency room or healthcare facility unannounced. More information can be found at dph.georgia.gov. This portion of WRUU Savannah Soundings programming is provided by listeners and by Brighter Day Natural Foods. Brighter Day Natural Foods has been serving Savannah's healthy food and supplement needs since 1978. It is located at the corner of Bull Street and Park Avenue. They have available online ordering and curbside delivery, and now a walk-up window for smoothies, juices, and sandwiches from the deli. They are open from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and 12 to 5:30 p.m. on Sunday. More information can be found at brighterdayfoods.com.
All right, we are back, everybody, and my special guest today is author Nicole Givens Kurtz, and we're talking about like I want to really hear like some more of what you feel like is a good step for that authentic change and like what people can do, because I feel like a lot of people, Nicole, this is a difficult conversation for them to have, and it's uncomfortable for them to have. I know that, like, for me, for example, I'm a white male, and often in the media there's a lot of, like, I know it's gatekeepers and all, but there's also a lot of white men bashing in the media, and there's a lot of racism out there still. We saw a lot of that the last I'm not gonna no politics here, but the last 4 years we saw a lot of that, just crazy stuff. And it's one of those things where it's like, well, how can you bridge the gap? Because honestly, I see people on both sides. Like, I see people that are, that they're wanting, to have the representation. They want to, have the platform and things like that. And then there's other folks out there that they feel like they're being shut out completely, and that they don't even have a chance to put their bid in. You know what I mean? And so I want to know, like, what are some of the things that you feel like people can do at their level, like, person to person level, to help make those authentic, lasting changes?
So I have a question first. So I have a clarifying question. What do you mean there are people who feel like they can't get their bid in? Like
they don't, like a friend of mine, John Williams. He said that people say, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. But what if you don't start off with boots? What if you don't have boots to start off with?
Right.
Like, so, you don't have a way to, you don't even have a way to get your bid in, like on a project, like, so just a metaphor or whatever. Right. But no, like, what if you don't start off even with the resources to be able to get to that point?
I think that over the last 5 or 6 years, the bootstrap theory has kind of been um, rendered kind of to mythological levels of that's part of that whole anyone can be anything in the United States. It's part of our mythos, right? The bootstrap theory is part of that mythos of America, but that's probably another topic. So what can people do to help increase that authentic? So for writers, I think writers can challenge their own internal beliefs, right? Their own biases to make sure that when they're deciding to include inclusive characters in their work, that those are well-rounded human beings and not just, I'm going to make this person Black because I need to have diversity in my story,
Right.
or Hispanic or whatever. I also think that it's more than just making them human and well-rounded characters. You also need to make sure that you probably have sensitivity readers to make sure that you're not committing any, not that any particular demographic is monolithic. They're not. But you do want to make sure as much as possible that you don't deliberately or unconsciously, either of those, both deliberately or unconsciously, create characters that are offensive in some manner. But I definitely think you can avoid, the easiest way to avoid stereotypical characters or one-dimensional characters is to not do diversity for diversity's sake. And just make sure that those characters are actually human people, right?
Yeah.
And that they're well-rounded and well fleshed out. That's an easy thing to do, right? Because you're building, as a writer, you're already building well-rounded, your protagonist is well-rounded, your antagonist, your secondary characters. Just make sure you're not just tossing in different cultures or demographics just to say, hey, look how diverse I am.
Right.
As far as readers go, I think that for readers, they have to challenge, right, just like a writer does, they have to challenge their internal biases, and read things that, again, as I said earlier, that may not right away appeal to them. So for example, if the doctor is always looking for horses, they're going to miss the zebra. So you want to make sure that you challenge like I think Kay Tempest Bledsoe had a challenge a few years ago. She challenged people to not read any white authors, to read other authors, to read diversely for 6 months to a year. Just whatever you picked up, make sure that if you like cyberpunk, make sure that you pick up a cyberpunk novel by somebody who wasn't white. And so that challenge people to read outside of what we get in a rut. We get into things that we like. I like, and it's like the same thing with meals. You like mashed potatoes with your meatloaf, and you get in a rut. And so what I would challenge readers to do to kind of boost and help, promote diversity really, because what really motivates it, right? It's money, it's sales, right? So more publishers and more magazines will look for and seek out more diverse stories when they see people asking and paying for those. And so I think readers should challenge their biases, read outside of their comfort level of what they're used to, and try things that are different. But I definitely think that the authenticity comes from self-examination and being honest with yourself. You don't have to proclaim it on social media, but you need to have honest conversations with yourself about your reading, about what kind of stories you like, why you like those stories, and what appeals to you about them, and then kind of see if you can grow from there. Growing is uncomfortable. And one of the things I used to tell my students, and I used to tell my own children, is that you need to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Because being uncomfortable is how we grow. It's how we stretch. It's how we grow. That's how you become that's how you evolve. It's not going to be comfortable. It's going to be uncomfortable. And I think we spend so much time trying not to hurt, trying not to be uncomfortable, trying not to be challenged. We want everything to be smooth sailing. But that's not how we grow.
Do you ever feel like it's kind of like an echo chamber too? When you hear the same things over and over again?
Yeah, of course.
I think that kind of contributes to with social media, and because a lot of things get amplified or over analyzed, or and at the end of the day, it's like we're all people, right? And how do we we celebrate our differences, and how do we help each other out? And I feel like there's there's a lot of groups out there that they don't necessarily want the utopian version of like, hey, we'll all help each other out. They're more like they want strife, they want conflict, they don't want people working together and that kind of thing. And I felt like the conversations, when you get to know people, I feel like that is, like in my life at least, conversations with folks about different topics or whatever have helped me grow a lot as a person. And I always encourage people to be open-minded, and not to, because people talk about stereotypes and they talk about biases and they talk about internal biases or external biases or whatever, confirmation bias. There's all kinds of, bias out there, prejudice, racism, whatever. There's all that. That's been part of humanity since humanity has been around. But as an independent critical thinker, you're able to challenge those, mindsets. And you're able to also, ask questions, and I feel like those are tools that help a lot too with authentic change, because then you're able to say, hey, wait a minute, why don't I like mumble rap? Well, is it just because it's new and I'm like, I grew up listening to the old school rap? Or why don't, what are the reasons why I don't like it? It's a bit, maybe because I'm getting older and I can't understand what they're saying. There's a lot of different things, I feel like, but when you critically think, because I did my undergrad in business and I did my master's in business and I also did a master of information systems, and I worked at the university level for like 10 years. And, it doesn't really matter, right? I mean, like, I think like it all comes back down to people, with education. You can have someone who's highly educated and they never finished high school, and then you can have other people who are, they've got credentials, but they're not educated. You know what I mean?
I do.
And so I feel like just having conversations and talking about it, like, taking action. But I agree with you. I don't think that surface, like, hey, I'm just going to put a character in there just to put a character. I mean, like, that's like, it's like, well, if you made the meat and potatoes thing, if you're like, hey, I'm going to make meat and potatoes, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, I'm doing steak and baked potato, but for some reason I want to serve ice cream with this steak and potato dish on the plate at the same time. It's like, why? Well, I just want to include ice cream. It's like, well, are you doing it because you just want to include ice cream, or are you doing it because it's a fit for the dish? It's like, why would you just do that just to do that? And I think a lot of people just do that because they want to get creds, or they want to get clout or something. It's not like they're doing it to, they're not doing it because it's like, well, this character grew up in Savannah and they were, they grew up and went to this school and that school, and it's like, well, who would the character be? They're like, well, this character grew up in Canada, and I just don't, I don't like that either. Honestly, Nicole, it's like something that's like a big turnoff for me. I'm like, oh. So, let me ask you. You had mentioned like people. I can't remember the author's name, about doing the read only African American writers. What are some of the resources out there that people can look for? Because, like you said, it's a lot of times it's like the same 5 people. A lot of people are getting the same 5 faces, and there are thousands and thousands of writers. I mean, like, Amazon puts out like 10,000 books a day, y'all. I mean, like, literally. And there's millions of books on Amazon every day. They're the largest publisher in the world. So what are some good resources for people, Nicole, that they can check out? More writers.
So there are actual categories on Amazon for Black and African American fantasy, Black and African American horror, Black and African American science fiction. So there are actual categories for those specific titles on Amazon, as well as other various groups. So Amazon is real adept at having tons of niche and subgroups. So you just put in Amazon's where I would start first. And secondly, I would I would read widely. So I think one of the things that we get into a habit of too is people like they only read like the big four now publishers,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't actually seek out. But Google is your friend. Like if you just put in Black fantasy authors, you'll get a list. I'm on a list. I'm on BuzzFeed's 6 Black science fiction, fantasy, and horror authors you should be reading now. Me and like Zigzag, Claiborne, and a few others are on that list. And so if you just Google Black science fiction authors, you'll find them. If you just Google, I mean, Google is your friend. Like those are the best places to find, but you got to look for it. And again, that requires you as the reader to be intentional in what you're seeking. But definitely diversify your friend group. That's another way. Like, yeah, we talked about an echo chamber earlier. If all your friends like only read like white male fantasy, and you may want to start looking around for other people, or other topics. That is, one of my other friends said that if you're in a group and if you're at a table, this is something that the majority demographic can do. If you're sitting at a group and you look at your friend group and your friend group is not diverse, you need to do something about that, right? And in a way that all my friends are white males. I don't have any Black male friends, not acquaintances, not people you work with, authentic friends. Then you are probably not getting a diverse world group until you're an echo chamber. And so just even if you're playing D&D, if your D&D group is predominantly one demographic, you may want to consider diversifying that.
Does that hold true for people of color as well?
So the issue with that is, and I think you and I may not always agree on this, but white people are the majority. And so African Americans and Hispanics, and we are not the majority. So we don't hold that power structure. We can't be racist. We can be prejudiced. We can be racist because racism is about power. And so what applies to the white majority in terms of systematic racism, dismantling that, working on yourself?
No, I'm talking about the friend group. I'm talking about the friend group, Nicole.
Oh, yeah, no. But most so
like, can you be in an echo chamber with like, let's say, like all African American female women in a group?
Possibly, yes.
And
yes.
I'm not really sure why you're saying that we disagree, because I feel like I'm more on your side than you actually think I am.
I don't think everything's equal, right? So I think that I don't think there's a 1-to-1 ratio. So if this is the same for white males, it's the same for Black women. I don't think that that's a 1-to-1 ratio. I think Black women need to have all Black women groups because there are things that are unique to Black women that don't affect other demographics. But should everyone have diverse friends? Yes, I think that's true.
I was just applying your own logic with if you look around and you have if you look at the same faces,
it is possible to have an echo group. I agree with you. I think
no. I mean, like when you were saying, if you look around and you see all the same faces, you need to diversify your group. I was just wondering if the same thing applied to what you're.
Yes. The short answer is yes. I agree with you. Yes. Yeah. But I think there are times I just want to give the caveat that I think there are times for Black women where we have a group that is just all Black women.
Well, I mean, like any group of people, you're going to identify, and not necessarily just because of your skin color, but if, like, let's say, for instance, space engineers, there's going to be stuff that they understand that other people are not going to understand because of their background, right? And so they're going to have groups where they're space engineers and they're doing their thing as space engineers that non-space engineers are not going to understand. And so, I agree with you. Like there's, honestly, I feel like if you want to have that group, have that group. If you want to do that, because, there's stuff that you've been through that I would never have an idea of or understand what it's like. There's stuff that I've been through in my life that you would have no idea either. It's just that people are going to gravitate towards people that they like. For me, I just don't like it when people are, I don't like when people are racist or prejudiced. I know you bring that up a lot about, Black people can't be racist. They can only be prejudiced. I don't like prejudice. I don't like racism. I don't like, power plays that people do. And I see it all the time. and I don't like prejudice. I mean, like, even if, you know, if somebody wants to be prejudiced and they can't be racist, I don't like that either. You know, I feel like it's just like, well, if you don't like somebody just because of their skin color and you're being prejudiced, then you're losing out, you know. But if you're like that too, and you also can use your power or authority or whatever, like you were talking about, it's not a 1-to-1 ratio or whatever, that's also wrong. You know, systemic racism is wrong. So I don't like either one. I don't like racism and I don't like prejudice, and I see a lot of both. I see a lot of it like all the way around with people, and I'm like, those are the kind of folks that I don't want to be around. And when I find out that they're like that, I don't stick around. They're not my friends. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I understand that.
All right. Well, let's see here. We got about another 5 minutes, Nicole, for this hour. Do you have anything that you want to add to that with the, with those groups or the authentic change or anything like that? Because I know you were saying about like diversify, look around, try to change that. I feel like that's a great point.
So I definitely just think that, and like many things, change is slow, but it's also okay. It starts small. It starts with you. It starts with you reading diverse books to your children and exposing them to a variety of different protagonists and types of people, right? And so I think it starts off with you and what the small changes that you make in your life, and then you become an example to others around you, not intentionally, but just by the way you live your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people go, "Oh, you read that to your daughter?" Well, yeah, let me see that book. It's a really cute book. It talks about potty training and the adventures of, and I'll try that with my kid. And so I definitely think that the change starts with you. You're the spark.
Yeah.
And so as long as right, and so that's kind of how we move forward. Is if everyone, and I mean everyone, does this work, we as a people can move beyond the trappings of our past.
Well, I feel like it's important too. What you're saying, like it starts with you, and I feel like it is really important to have that communication and also to have, like tangible goals. Like, hey, these are things that we can work towards. Like when you said about the 5% publishing in the industry, it's like, well, how can we make that 6%? How can we make that 7% or 10%? Or, whatever percent, how can we make those incremental, because it's not going to, double from like 5 to 10 to 20 to whatever. It could, but more than likely it's going to be incremental changes, right? How do we make that happen? How do we, and like you said, you can look people up, you can Google it, you can, just open yourself up to checking out stuff that maybe you're not reading, I think that's a great point that you made. I feel like if we can work towards those goals, and it goes back to storytelling. I know we weren't really talking much about storytelling as far as like, the love of storytelling, but I feel like we were in a way too, because we were talking about like, for example, with your writing, you're writing spec fiction, you're writing sci-fi stuff, fantasy stuff, horror stuff, if you brought up the example of like a white man come up to your table and they're like, oh, I wouldn't be interested in that. And you're like, well, do you like Blade Runner? And they're like, yeah. Well, this is kind of like Blade Runner, right? When people have that and they have those, prejudices, I'm not even saying that right. When they have those prejudices or whatever, those internal biases, it's like, well, wait a minute. Why are you just looking at the cover and you're like, it's just like an automatic turn off for you? It's like, what was that? If this is the kind of story you like, why is that? And I feel like that, like you said, question your own internal biases as well is important, right? So I really appreciate you sharing that because, it's something I feel like is important in conversations. You see a lot of lip service out there, just like you were saying, like, the surface type inclusion where it's not really authentic. I mean, I feel like that's what you see a lot. Like you said about, the BLM stuff, where these companies are like, oh yeah, we support it, but then they support the BLM, but they don't really support African American people. And
Right.
that disconnect there is a huge problem in our nation right now. Has been, but it's it's making those changes is what I'd like to see more of. You know what I mean? I would like to see where my friends, people that I'm close with, are not being affected by it day in and day out.
Right.
And because it bothers me. I know, being a white male or whatever, it might sound weird, but it really does bother me because these are people that I care about. These are people that I really don't. I don't like that whole I don't see color thing, because I think that's a bunch of nonsense. But I look at people like for their character more than I look at like what can they do for me, or are they
Right.
wealthy, or their skin color, or those kind of things. I look at their character. A lot of people are superficial and they don't. And it really does bother me when I see my friends suffering because of something that they have absolutely no control over, their skin color. And, I would love, I mean, like, I know it sounds funny, but I loved, back in the days, Star Trek. I would love it if we lived in a culture where people were, like, not judged off of their skin color, or not, systemically oppressed by it. You know what I mean?
Right. Yes, I do. I am also a Star Trek fan.
Nice. All right. We've got to take a break, Nicole. We're going to come back at the 4 o'clock hour, y'all. And we're just going to free willy it. We're going to see like what we talk about and whatever. Nicole, if you got some topics in mind, definitely bring it up, because I'm really having a good time talking with you. I enjoy and I appreciate you being willing to talk with me and share, like these thoughts, because I feel like it's one of the things that's so important, but a lot of people just don't want to. They don't want to dig past that surface level stuff.
Right.
So.
Well, it's uncomfortable, and no one likes to be uncomfortable. So.
No, but it is like you said. You have to kind of force yourself to, if you want to grow and change. So, all right, everybody. Thank you for tuning.